Late night, they ain't getting no rest. Work so hard, people think I'm obsessed. Cream at the crop, won't settle for no less. Headed to the top, arena so focused. Yeah, gorilla of the jungle, I've been beating on my chest. I learned from the struggle, it was all just a test.
Hey guys, and welcome back. So today we're going to jump back into the world of Bitcoin miners. So we have seen a few of the miners moving pretty aggressively off their local lows. So we're going to go back, take a look at the fundamentals, find the miners that I think are potentially some of the more undervalued targets that we want to accumulate in the eventual outcome that Bitcoin puts in that bottom, reverses to the upside, and goes on that continuation to another leg. So we're going to jump over to our other screen here. First thing, you guys recognize this document if you've seen my videos before or you follow along with my miner mania posts into the cryptoverse community. That's where this all started. Originally, I just started sharing analysis about the Bitcoin miners because I'd been following them for years before. I started to see the topic creep up within the community, and I kind of just decided to just take it upon myself to start sharing more and more about the Bitcoin miners themselves, just because I had focused on them from a fundamental and valuation perspective. They're one of the first major, really successful investments that I had within kind of this space. And it's a really interesting niche for me, both coming from a background in computer engineering as well as working within the gold mining industry for a number of years. So it kind of fit that perfect little niche for me. I really enjoyed kind of learning the space. You know, it is very volatile. It's really hard to manage your positions, manage your emotion. That's why I came up with this system. So basically, me getting into these very volatile asset classes. So when I'm talking Bitcoin miners, when I first got into them, we were going up 50 to 100x on some of these Bitcoin miners, which were insane moves. Ultimately though, just like altcoins, to the upside with that levered exposure comes the downside risk. In the bear market, lots of these Bitcoin miners dropping 90-95% from their highs. So really you have to recognize that leveraged exposure. That's what I mean when I say leveraged. I basically just mean if Bitcoin moves 5%, you can expect the miners to probably move at least double that in terms of size. So you're looking at about a 10% move for the miners versus that 5% move that we saw in Bitcoin itself. So just paying attention here. Back over, just a little note kind of about why I got into Bitcoin miners. I continue to be bullish on Bitcoin miners because Bitcoin does not exist without the miners. They are the ones who are responsible for securing the network, processing the transactions. They're the ones mining coins below spot price, at least in some cases. So that's why I come here, I look at my fundamentals, I find the cheapest valuations, the strongest fundamentals. Those are the companies that I want to focus on, build positions in, and then all we do is build positions when fundamental valuations are cheap. We wait patiently, and then we wait until we reach our targets, and we take our profits, and we just rinse and repeat. Ultimately, the end goal, you want to use stuff like this to increase your long-term positions or increase your cash. So for me, what I want to do is build long-term investments that I want to hold for the next 10, 20 years. So stuff like this, you know, these Bitcoin miners, if they're going to drop 90% in the bear market, you don't really want to be holding it during that whole downtrend. That's why we de-risked a lot of our positions. You know, we still held our core fundamental miners, so Marathon, CleanSpark, Marathon, CleanSpark, and Iris Energy, as well as we do have a handful of miners within our ITC trade along portfolio. So for people who aren't aware also, within that community, I was sharing a trade along portfolio, essentially targeting different entries on miners, trying to build a DCA approach within this asset class. So I kind of going to go on with that. But looking at the potential for new positions or additions to positions, because, you know, we could be getting that relief in the market where we start to kind of irk out a bit of a bottom. We get our counter trend rally to the upside, so we could take advantage of that. And because these are so volatile, it could offer good opportunities. You know, if we can get in early, get in on a nice retest, a nice technical setup, ride it up even 50 to 100%. Like I'll show you momentarily here on the charts that these miners, they move aggressively and they do it over and over and over. Right now, we do have some concerns. I'll bring those up as well, but essentially just coming right to the fundamentals. Down here, this is a production fundamental score. You have a max score of 6, so it only just takes in account kind of a few of these metrics here that I think are really important. So the Bitcoin HODL I think is very important. I think their efficiency is very important, and I also believe that if they met their prior year's growth, that's very important. In some instances, like cores here, they have a pretty low score because in terms of Bitcoin production and like the mining side of things, they're more of an AI HPC company. They've transitioned. They have a huge deal with CoreWeave. Essentially, they're looking at $10 billion in revenue over 12 years. If they exercise the full option, and they do say they have up to 900 megawatts available for AI HPC. Currently, there's 590 contracted to CoreWeave for that 10.2 billion. So if we extrapolate the same terms on that deal, the same price, you're looking at $15.56 billion over the next 12 or over the 12-year contract, or $1.3 billion per year in revenue. So we take a look at Core Scientific. You have 18 exahash. That's a pretty solid hash rate. They're right up there, kind of in the upper end of the middle class miners. They're producing approximately 250 to 300 Bitcoin per month. And they've got that deal with CoreWeave already locked in. CoreWeave is responsible for the transition of equipment. So essentially the capex cost of that transition of equipment. Core Scientific is the one actually transitioning the data centers. So despite the fact their efficiency is a little bit higher, they have that huge energy pipeline and that massive AI deal with a pretty substantial amount of revenue. Once this contract is fully executed and producing, we're going to be looking, like I said, $1.3 billion per year for Core Scientific. We look at them right down here. Their market cap currently is $2.4 billion. Their enterprise value is just shy of $4 billion. So basically the value you're getting in the enterprise or the company as a whole, when you factor in everything, you're almost looking at double the cost of their current market cap, showing that undervaluation and not really supportive of that massive AI deal, because $1.3 billion a year in revenue for a company currently trading at $2.5 billion is pretty crazy. So we'll continue following along. Cores is one I really like. In terms of AI HPC, they are the go-to, the big dog in terms of the miners. They have that larger deal than any other miner, to the tune of at least double the size of TeraWulf. So we'll just continue going along. We see Marathon here at 54 exahash. CleanSpark get a little bit of a bump up here. They're at 42.4 exahash. It was previously about 40. Iris Energy here with a big jump, pushing from about 32 exahash up to 40 exahash. That's what we see lots of the times from Iris Energy. They bring substantial amounts of hash rate on all at once, just kind of as ongoing as their construction of their facilities here. So we also have Wolf coming in 9.7, Hive 6.4, although Hive is looking to double their Bitcoin mining capacity in the next couple months. I do believe we'll have to touch on that again. And they do have that pathway to 25 exahash, so supported with their new data centers in Paraguay. Nice efficiency there, a nice Bitcoin HODL for the size of the company. Bitfarms here did a really good job increasing their hash rate. They've now pushed up near 20 exahash, bringing efficiency down. That being said, they did sell one of their facilities they were building in Paraguay to Hive. They did 80% of the construction and then decided they were going to pivot and sell it to Hive. That's fine. Hive was happy to come in. They have operations in Paraguay already, so to come in, expand those, further those relations, it's really not a big deal. I actually really liked it. It was a great deal for Hive. Cypher here was doing well recently. Their efficiency is good, hash rate is good, not much difference. Bitcoin HODL, it's all right, but nothing too crazy for the size of the company. It's a bit larger here. You're looking at a same kind of HODL as Bitfarms, but twice the size of the company. That being said, there is SoftBank, who is a PIPE investor in Cypher. SoftBank is one of the primary funders for the data centers for Stargate or OpenAI. So there's this pseudo relationship. We could potentially see more investment from SoftBank into Cypher, securing more of their data center portfolio for AI HPC. Hut, another one here, kind of lower hash rate, low network share. Their efficiency is better. It's coming down. That's what I like to see. Nice Bitcoin hodl here at 10,264. Good energy under management. And they've kind of gone into that AI HPC. So Hut is another one. In terms of the actual mining fundamentals, you know, I do think some of the others are stronger, but Hut kind of has a bit of a hype kind of catalyst around it. There is the Trump kids. They're invested in this company now, the spinoff of this company. So Hut 8, it's really been performing well. There's a lot of kind of high net worth individuals that are showing this, so it does get a lot more attention than some of the other miners. Bit Digital here is going to look not great when it comes to the actual mining fundamentals because they're primarily an AI HPC company, so we need to keep that in mind. In terms of their hodl, that's a pretty good, impressive amount. So that's a Bitcoin and Ethereum equivalent. Bit Digital holds a lot of Ethereum and they stake that Ethereum, so they're making yield basically on the staked Ethereum, as well as capitalizing on the hopeful price appreciation that we see in the future. But when we look at their Bitcoin mining fundamentals, you know, not the best, but their AI HPC revenue is really good. They're securing lots of contracts, you know, landing tier 3 data centers and really pushing to kind of get into that AI HPC space. They've got the most current revenue per year, and they're a very small company here, just at shy of $400 million. And seeing their enterprise value pretty close there. So what we kind of see, basically, market cap, the total market cap for these major miners is $19 billion. So that's pretty insane. When you look at how much Bitcoin they hold and how much cash they hold, you know, you're looking right there at 12.9, so $13 billion in just cash and Bitcoin. And then so basically being valued at a total of 19 billion, which is pretty insane. When you look at the combined enterprise value, you're looking at $53 billion. So that's almost a 2.5 times undervaluation when you factor in all of the kind of the enterprise value. And that doesn't even factor in the total traditional data center valuation. So talking about traditional data centers, they're generally valued at it's a pretty big range. You get from kind of $5 to $15 million per megawatt. So I took a $7.5 million per megawatt traditional data center valuation. This is this metric here. And then I multiplied it by the total megawatts. This is a little off because we don't have ciphers here. So Cypher likely holds at least a few hundred megawatts, and we could increase that there. But basically, just in data center value at the current operating capacity, you're looking at $42 billion in just data centers at a normal valuation on kind of an average scale. So not going too expensive, not too cheap, you know. And then this is the kind of the pipeline here. So upwards to 14,000 megawatts potentially building out here across these miners. That would be $104 billion revenue, or $104 billion value there at $7.5 million per megawatt. So that kind of, the math adds up when you take the 42 billion in terms of data center management and you take the 13 billion in terms of liquidity, then you end up with about 55 billion, so just around that total enterprise value, which again tells me miners right now as a whole are very undervalued, over 2.5 times what their actual assets are worth, and that doesn't even factor in the revenues. So that's what's so crazy when you have companies like Core Scientific who are technically undervalued and looking to make hundreds of millions, if not $1 billion plus per year going forward in the future. It's pretty insane. It gives these opportunities to buy cheap fundamentals. That's what I talk about. So if we look at our relative valuation score, so all these metrics, I've gone over them a ton. They essentially are just to compare the valuations of each miner to each other. So kind of taking an industry standpoint and basing against each other to find the most undervalued. Coming down here with a relative valuation score, the lower is going to be better. That represents more undervaluation. So first place, we've got DMGI and Hive, and then we've got Bitfarms, Riot, and CleanSpark coming in as the most undervalued by all these metrics. So I'm going to say, when I'm talking about these ones, my favorite ones, when it comes to Bitcoin mining, CleanSpark over Riot, just from a production standpoint and a consistency standpoint, CleanSpark's been a lot stronger for a lot longer. stronger. They've done better with their growth targets. They're more efficient, they're more profitable, and I do expect them to continue in that trend. So CleanSpark is my favorite pure form Bitcoin miner. Riot could present some decent opportunities because they have said they're willing to devote about 600 megawatts of their Corsicana facility to AI HPC. If they're able to actually land a deal, that's going to look really good, and it could send the stock up. So Riot is a good option for kind of that AI HPC play. But when you're looking at just the fundamentals, the balance sheet, history, consistency, all of kind of the major mining fundamentals, I think CleanSpark is the best pure form miner, and that's the one that I focus on. It's the one I have focused on for the longest time, and I'll show you in the chart. It did pay off. Marathon, a good opportunity here. You see the enterprise value quite high relative to the market cap, as well as the liquidity to market cap. So they're at 98% of their market cap currently in Bitcoin and cash. So when you factor in the data center valuations, you get this nice undervaluation. That being said, I do think they've bounced a little bit more off the lows than some of the others, so maybe looking at kind of hoping for a bit more of a pullback and giving us that entry. Iris Energy, another one. It's kind of that hyper growth, very efficient, very profitable, but they don't hold any Bitcoin. I do really like them. They have that opportunity for AI HPC. So when we're looking at Riot versus Iris Energy, two options there, both kind of similar. They're both really have a big power portfolio available to them and willing to devote a substantial amount of that to AI HPC. Looking at TeraWulf here, I do like TeraWulf as well. They also have an AI HPC deal to the tune of, I think it's just 70 megawatts right now. It might be expanded to 270 megawatts. I would have to double check. But when it comes down to it, Core Scientific or TeraWulf, I think Cores is the more obvious choice here just because the contract is so much bigger. They already have it kind of in place. They've transitioned equipment already. So Core Scientific already in the process has a bigger deal signed. I think that offers the better relative valuation. When we're looking at Hive versus Bitfarms, two smaller cap miners, I think Hive here obviously basically based off the relative valuation score is the cheaper company, more upside to the price more upside to the price target, similar institutional ownership, a better cost to mine, and then when we look at the relative valuation compared to peers, just coming in a lot stronger, and that 76% liquidity to market cap ratio. So that big amount of Bitcoin that Hive holds, as well as cash, really gives them that value. And you see the enterprise value exceeding the market cap again. That's what we want to see. So Hive, consistent, efficient, very experienced, one of the oldest Bitcoin miners, holds a lot of their market cap in liquidity. I think is a great opportunity, especially with their plans to go from 6 to 25 exahash. That's a 4x move in hash rate. We saw CleanSpark do that, excuse me, and the stock price just went nuts. So just pay attention to that. Sorry, excuse me. All right, moving on. So we talked about Cypher, kind of coming in middle of the pack, a little bit less undervalued than some of the other peers, but a little bit maybe a premium just from that SoftBank partnership. Hut also similarly valued. Bit Digital also similarly valued, but I think Bit Digital is another great one to focus on as a smaller cap and might be a little bit higher risk just due to the smaller cap. They don't seem to move quite as aggressively sometimes as some of the other bigger companies. So all in all, if we're talking about this, focusing on the ones that I'm most bullish on, CleanSpark for pure form, Core Scientific probably for my AI HPC, Bit Digital is another opportunity here, BTBT, for a smaller AI HPC play. Hive here looking for kind of that value play where they have AI HPC, they've got Bitcoin mining, and they have a lot of relative value as well as relative undervaluation to peers. But I also like Marathon. Riot, I do recognize the opportunity there, and Iris Energy as well. Iris Energy, I expect to continue on with their hyper growth. They're aiming for 52 exahash before the end of the first half, in which then they'll go on to kind of explore that AI HPC and really expand that. So those are the ones I'm very interested in here. I'll show you here also, we did have a high time frame target accumulation range. We can pretty much see, again, most of the miners coming down within that range, except for Bitfarms missed our target, Bit Digital just missed our target slightly, and DMGI missed our target as well. So we're not going to hit every single one of these, but you can see basically more often than not, these accumulation ranges did line up with the local lows. This is not the first time that we've been able to kind of find these ranges. So we're going to flip over now to our chart. Look at WGMI. So what I see here is my big money buy indicator on the bottom. You can see all these gold bars, and then we've got our Bitcoin pair strength indicator right here. So these red dots represent 52-week lows on the Bitcoin pair. So although it is trending down, we're coming in our 52-week low area. So same thing that we saw over here, and same thing that we saw on around the lows over here. We're also starting to get gold bar prints on our big money buy indicator. So similar to here, similar through here, and same thing all through here. Different instances where we had this gold money or this gold big money buy indicator flash lining up with the local lows. So you can kind of see every single time I just marked where it ended up, and ultimately lining up with the lows almost every single time. Same thing in through here, same thing over here. So we can kind of recognize we've started to see that flash. We're in 52-week lows when it comes to our Bitcoin pair strength indicator. We are curling up. We want to see this really start to uptrend though. So not getting too crazy. We see a nice little increase in volume right there. You can see that, those candles right there. And then this green zone that I marked here is this is like an accumulation zone is what I'm going to call it. So you can see from the actual bear market lows, this zone right through here, all these gold boxes was where I marked those gold bars in our big money buying indicator. So if I came here, stretched this out, you would be able to see, sorry about that. Yeah, so right here, this is what I'm talking about. We've got 4 gold bars flashing here in this range. We've got 5 gold bars flashing in this range here. We've got 4 flashing here, 1 here, 1 here, so on and so forth. So I take that whole range here and make a shaded area that gives me this accumulation range where big money has previously bought. So anything in this zone here, this is where big money has accumulated Bitcoin miners throughout the cycle. That being said, it doesn't mean that we're just going to reverse and go straight up, and this is going to be a new high, because we're not sure. The cycle could be over, that is a possibility. We're stuck under this sell order block resistance. We've got this, looks like to be a bearish cross coming up on our moving averages. We see the VRVP point of control is also right in line with those 2 moving averages. So there's going to be a lot of resistance up in through here, and it's going to take a bit of work for price. If we can break up, we need that higher low, higher high, continued higher low structure before we can talk about continuation to another leg. If we get rejected, you guys know the price action by now. This is kind of the more likely path. If we come down to these lower zones of support, this is going to be the bear market accumulation target for WGMI. So just remember, pay attention to that. But nice volume. We do want to see the uptrending price action. If we take a look at some of our momentum indicators, so we'll look at our directional movement index, the MACD, the RSI as usual, and the vortex indicator. And then we'll get rid of these drawings here. I'll just get rid of that and that. So we can see on the daily, we did get a bullish cross of the DMI negative and positive line. So right there, bullish cross, bullish cross on RSI trending up. We've got, MACD trending up, RSI trending up, bullish cross on the vortex indicator on the daily. If we flip to the weekly, we can also see that bullish momentum starting to build. We'll take a quick look at the 4-hour. 4-hour losing a little bit of momentum, so that's when I say nothing goes straight up. We're going to probably come up. We might tag this resistance zone. Watch for the higher low at this support zone here. You could look to enter there on WGMI with a stop loss below support, just protecting that downside risk. But in terms of that, we could have some near term, so low time frame, a little retracement, but the daily and the weekly look good for a macro move, assuming that the stock market can kind of support that and we don't get any further volatility when it comes to kind of the tariffs, trade wars, the same stuff we've been following So we're going to flip over here now. I'm just going to also clean this up a little bit. So I want to look at kind of a comparison of all the Bitcoin miners. So what I'm going to start with here is our big cap Bitcoin miners. So large cap miners. Looking here, that's Marathon, CleanSpark, Riot, and Core Scientific. So anyone over $2 billion market cap fell into that big large tier Bitcoin miner. So you can see here, Bitcoin's price performance is in orange. The Bitcoin miners, WGMI, so the Bitcoin miner ETF, that's miners as an average kind of performance, is in blue. And then all the other miners are in these individual colors. So right away we can see an obvious outperformer. This is CleanSpark. Look at that, CleanSpark returning up to 900% almost on this move here. Massively outperforming Bitcoin, massively outperforming the Bitcoin miners. And also, even now on this leg up, it's still outperforming the Bitcoin miners as a whole. So that's why I really like CleanSpark from a fundamental perspective. They continue to execute as well as they have in the past. It's really good to see that consistency, you know, that no BS approach. They're just following through with their strategy. They're doing what they're saying. That's what I like to see. We get a lot of miners that make these promises and just under deliver. So another thing though, we see Core Scientific had to go through Chapter 11 bankruptcy last cycle. They are a whole new company now, new management team, new business model. They have that CoreWeave partnership with that guaranteed revenue. So when we look at how Core Scientific performed from that launch out of Chapter 11, they actually performed even better. So we're looking to try and capitalize on the top performers that kind of really show that relative strength against the underlying asset. So for me, for pure form Bitcoin miners, CleanSpark is that obvious choice. For AI HPC hybrid miners, Core Scientific is that choice, and we can recognize that here, them massively outperforming. We see Riot and Marathon have actually underperformed miners and Bitcoin essentially. Sorry, if we go back to the cycle lows, yes, so we have, Marathon and Riot underperforming slightly. Core Scientific, when you factor it there, it doesn't really make sense because, as I said, this is when they started. So CleanSpark is the obvious choice for pure form, and Core Scientific is my choice for a big cap AI hybrid stock. So I'm going to get rid of these, and then we're going to look at our mid caps, do the same thing. So just kind of comparing relative valuations here. So we see Cypher, Iris Energy, Wolf, Hut are going to be our mid cap miners. And Cypher is kind of outperforming here, and we also see kind of outperform the majority. So really Cypher is going to be that one that might offer more relative strength for an opportunity to get into. We also see Iris or Wolf here kind of coming in. You know, Wolf looks pretty good, lagging a little bit. Iris Energy did well. It kind of outperformed a little bit through here, but we ultimately see it performing in line with the Bitcoin miners as a whole. And then Hut is actually underperforming here. So when we come down to it, you know, Cypher, Wolf, those are two really good opportunities there for mid caps. I do still really like Iris Energy from a fundamental perspective. They are lagging a little bit, but they're in line with Bitcoin miners. So we could see that outperformance really start to take off if we get some bullish catalysts, but Wolf has that contract already signed and that likely continued expansion into AI HPC. Cypher's got that SoftBank investment, so obviously the markets like that there's a little more clarity there. Everybody's still waiting for that deal from Iris Energy before we kind of, you know, really start to price it in. You know, it's all speculation at this point. They're just building out the megawatts. They don't have the contracts yet. So we're going to take a look now, lastly, just at our low cap Bitcoin miners. You can see the low caps actually underperforming basically all the way here. Hive, the lowest underperformer here. It's pretty crazy when you look at the fundamentals and you look at the share price valuations of Hive. It just doesn't make sense to me, but the market is undervaluing them. It might be due to that kind of less aggressive growth strategy, but if we see Hive executing on this 25 exahash plan, you're going to see this company go from 6 exahash to 25 exahash in half a year, just like Iris Energy did, just like CleanSpark did last year, and they went up 3, 4, 5 times the stock price in such a short amount of time. So that's kind of that opportunity that I'm looking for here. Good, strong valuations that are cheap. you know, a nice, pretty good growth pipeline. As long as they can execute on it, it could offer really good opportunities. But the low caps really underperforming. It's kind of is the way things go. The bigger the company, the more liquidity it seems to attract. There are investment requirements for certain asset managers, so they might not be able to buy into some of these stocks, just being lower market cap. I'm going to flip over to Marathon here. We're going to look at every miner really quickly. Everything's going to look pretty similar, guys. So all the momentum indicators are going to look quite similar. And a lot of these coming down to their accumulation ranges, bouncing, hopefully getting back above support, but we don't have that confirmation of trend yet. So what I'm just going to kind of flip through all the charts and tell you what I'm looking for. You know, we want to come back up. We want to keep going here, break a little bit higher. Hopefully we can poke up, tag that 200-day. Look for the higher low retest here. That could be an opportunity for Marathon, assuming that the other markets look good. So Bitcoin looks good and the stock market looks good. We're going to look at Riot. You know, same thing. We're looking here. We've got a little bit of a break, but there's no confirmation. So we're waiting for those higher highs, higher lows. Even on, if we take a look at the daily, this is only one higher high. So not enough confirmation. You know, before we want to enter, we need at least higher low, higher high, higher low. And then if this looks good here, the indicators are nice and reset. So we come here, you know, we get a little bit of a dump, and our Vortex indicator resets, our RSI and MACD reset, and our DMI resets, and gives us a bullish setup. Then that could be an opportunity there, but you're not going to have confirmation until sometime over here. CleanSpark up $9, so CleanSpark's up almost 50% from that target range. Same thing, has broken out of this first downtrend. It's sitting right above the 50-day moving average. Watch for that retest of the VRVP point of control. Could be a good opportunity to enter there. We see a little bit more confirmation of that trend change when it comes to CleanSpark. So we see this price action here. And then just watch for that higher low back test, and then we could ride this initially up into the 200-day or this resistance zone in here. That's a decent trade opportunity. Flipping over to Cypher at $3, same thing. Look at this, guys, bouncing there nicely. We pull a trend line. Let's take our Fibonacci as well. Let's look for some confluence of support to enter Cypher here. So if we come back, look for anything on this trend line or within this cycle Fibonacci, but Cypher's looking pretty good here. We want to confirm that higher low here. Ideally, that would be just you'd essentially have 3 points, you know, for a daily confirmation. You might wait for an additional subsequent higher high and higher low, just because I don't think we're going to take out this trend line right away. There's a lot of resistance, VRVP point of control, moving averages, trend line resistance, so not going to be straight up. Look for those higher lows, continuation price action. Looking at Bitfarms here, also bounced from the support level, holding those higher highs, higher lows for now. It's above our low time frame moving averages, so that looks pretty good. But we want to see, you know, continuation. If we can get a further push up into the 50-day, that's going to be the most bullish, and then we'll come back, retest. That's going to be your entry there, hopefully riding that to new highs, assuming that the market structure still looks good. Hive here is still going to be within that bear market accumulation. So we look here, we zoom back. I'm going to show you kind of Hive. Basically, we came down almost a little bit lower, but similar to that bear market low, you know, being valued as cheap as it was in the depths of the bear market, while Bitcoin is at 95,000, and given their valuation is pretty insane. So good relative valuation there. We want to see that we've got that low established there, broken it, so higher low again, and then maybe one more for that continuation confirmation, and we can go from there. Hut, it's a similar chart, kind of came back towards our target area, just didn't quite tag it, you know, missed it by a fraction of a percent. That's when I say, if you have a margin of error, if you wanted to enter Hut and you were targeting $10 and the price came to $10.05 and you didn't hit buy, you know, I can't really say anything. That's on you. Don't miss dollars by pinching pennies. Basically, we see here though, we've got that higher low, we've got the higher high. Look for the subsequent higher low, potentially looking at a swing trade, stop loss below support here. We're above our VRVP point of control, bouncing from strong horizontal support, currently just poking at the 200-day. So watch for that higher low. That could be an opportunity there for Hut. You know, going to be watching that one. Iris Energy, up 3.8% yesterday. Same thing, just poking back above that long trend line. So I'll show you that from this whole market cycle, essentially riding here. We deviated a little bit below here, followed by a huge rally, deviated below here. So we could get a rally here. A potential target, we could pull our Fibonacci resistance from this high to this low. So that kind of right here in that sell order block with that 200-day moving average and the 0.5 Fibonacci could be a potential target. Ideally though, I want to see Iris break out, hold this trend line, and then we can kind of continue up and attack some of these higher levels. For now, we could ultimately break down. It's really going to depend if the stock market opens up really weak on Monday, Bitcoin dumps on Monday, something like that. You know, it's not the first time we've seen it. Then we might either be due more consolidation here before we can kind of break above and do something like that. So that's another opportunity. But more of like my base case, kind of if we reject and break below, is that bearish rejection. So breaking down, back testing, getting rejected, and then continuing down to lower targets before attempting to reverse from a lower target there. TerraWolf also was down a little bit yesterday. So again, breaking out of this downtrending price action, but we want to see those continued higher highs and higher lows before we get in, not chasing stuff that's pumped 60% off the lows. Core Scientific bouncing nicely, breaking this downtrend here, so nice to see. Let's look again, wait for the higher low, that's your entry there, stop loss below support. Looking at Bit Digital, same thing. You're going to recognize a lot of these patterns. Also stuck under this trend line and looking a little bit weaker on a technical perspective. As long as these lows can hold, let's see if we can build some bottom structure, you know, and then look at potentially getting in something, a more durable move if we can get up there. So these are just rough paths, guys. Obviously, it's not going to follow this exactly, but that just shows you, you know, you get these little pumps and these retests. Same thing when you look at this price action here. It wasn't just straight up. It was up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down. So that's what I say. Nothing straight up or straight down. You get these retests almost all of the time. More often than not, so we need to continue paying attention to that. That's it for the Bitcoin miners. I know it's a lot to cover. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of charts, as well as kind of looking at the different comparisons, but that's essentially what I wanted to talk about. So breaking it down again, top picks for myself: CleanSpark, Core Scientific, Hive, Bit Digital, you know, and then kind of coming in next, I'd say Marathon, Iris Energy looking really good. Cypher's a really good opportunity. Hut is a decent opportunity along with Riot. They kind of have a bit more hype around them. Hut with their partnerships and Riot with their ability to divert 600 megawatts potentially to AI HPC. TerraWolf, I do like TerraWolf from the right valuation perspective, but when I compare it to Core Scientific currently, I like Core Scientific more, so I'll focus on them. Same thing, Hive versus Bitfarms. I like both companies from a fundamental perspective. I like Hive more from a consistency, from a kind of a historic and as well as a valuation perspective. So really going forward, I'm interested in any of these miners at the right prices. We're not really going to know what's going to happen. You know, I can't predict the price action over the next few weeks. So we'll wait and see. We're watching them all and we'll enter the ones that make the most technical sense. Hopefully we can focus on the strongest fundamentals with the cheapest valuations and then look at really good technical setups to build positions in those companies. So thank you so much, guys, for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.